Stage 2, the 13 colonies began occasional cooperation. Parliament imposed the stamp tax. The stamp tax taxed documents and printed material. No taxation without representation. Not being able to vote is a people's rights problem. Let's go back to the beginning. Parliament imposed the Stamp Act. When we say Parliament, we mean the British government. And remember that the Stamp Act was something that the British government did to the colonists in an attempt to make money. Britain had an economic problem. They were trying to solve it by taxing the colonists. The first time the 13 colonies actually cooperated was 11 years after the French and Indian War, when Britain imposed the Stamp Act in 1765. The stamp tax, which taxed documents and printed material such as newspapers, was very unpopular. The colonists hated it. The colonial leaders said they had good reason for not paying the tax. Colonial leaders began to say that the British Parliament had no right to tax the 13 colonies because the colonies did not have any elected representatives in Parliament. The rallying cry for the colonial protests over taxes passed in Parliament was no taxation without representation. Not being able to vote on the taxes that you have to pay is a people's rights problem. The colonists had a people's rights problem and had to figure out a solution. And by doing that, they moved to the second stage of cooperation, which is occasional voluntary cooperation. The Stamp Act Congress met. In October of 1765, the Stamp Tax Congress met to find a solution to the stamp tax problem. The most effective thing the Stamp Tax Congress did was to call for a boycott of all goods from Britain. Remember, a boycott occurs when a group of people do not buy certain goods or services in order to make a government change a law. The boycott was effective and caused British trade with the colonies to drop by 14%. The British lost money. British business owners became angry at the king and at the British Parliament. At the same time, the Sons of Liberty discouraged anyone from actually collecting the stamp tax. The anger of the British business owners and the small amount of money collected caused the British Parliament to repeal the Stamp Act. That means they took it away. The 13 colonies had worked together as a group boycotting British goods. The 13 colonies had entered stage 2, occasional voluntary cooperation, and their cooperation worked. It ended the Stamp Act.